The rain had been falling for hours when Elliot Grayson sat alone in the dim corner of a quiet cafe, staring at the divorce papers resting between his hands. The ink on them looked darker than it should have, as if the words themselves carried the weight of betrayal. 3 weeks earlier, Elliot had discovered that his wife, Camille Hartley Grayson, had been having an affair, not with a stranger, not with someone distant or faceless, but with Dominic Vale, a charismatic investor who moved through the city's elite circles like a man who believed the world had been built specifically for him. The moment Elliot found the messages on Camille's phone, something inside him collapsed in silence. They had been married for 8 years. 8 years of dinners, late-night conversations, quiet mornings, and promises whispered in the dark. And now all of it felt like a carefully painted illusion. He had already made up his mind. The divorce papers were ready. All he needed was Camille's signature. Across the cafe window, the rain blurred the city lights into soft streaks of gold and silver. Elliot exhaled slowly, wondering how life could unravel so quickly. If you've ever experienced betrayal or watched someone rebuild their life after heartbreak, take a moment to like this story so it can reach more people who might need to hear it today. The cafe door opened. Elliot barely looked up, expecting another customer escaping the rain, but the woman who walked in moved with quiet confidence. Her coat was deep navy, perfectly tailored, and her posture carried a calm authority that made the room feel slightly smaller. She paused at the counter, scanned the cafe briefly, and then her eyes settled on Elliot. A moment later, she was standing at his table. "Mr. Grayson." Her voice was soft but steady. Elliot blinked in surprise. "Yes." She placed a leather folder gently on the table and sat across from him without asking. "My name is Serafina Vale." The name struck him immediately. Vale. Dominic's wife. Elliot stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "You're Dominic's wife." Serafina nodded once. Her expression held neither anger nor embarrassment, only a strange composure. "I know about Camille," she said calmly. The words fell into the space between them like stones into water. Elliot felt his jaw tighten. "Then you understand why I'm here with these?" he said, tapping the divorce papers. Serafina glanced down at the documents before returning her gaze to him. "Yes," she said quietly. "And that is exactly why I need you not to file them yet." Elliot frowned. "I'm sorry." She slid the leather folder toward him. Inside that folder is a bank transfer agreement worth $50 million. For a moment, Elliot thought he had misheard. He opened the folder slowly. Inside was a formal document stamped with the logo of Valerian Capital, Dominic Vale's investment empire. Beneath it was a certified financial statement confirming the transfer. $50 million. Elliot looked up sharply. "What kind of joke is this?" Serafina folded her hands. "It's not a joke." "Then explain it." "I will," she said, her voice calm. "But first, I need you to promise you'll listen without interrupting." The rain continued tapping softly against the windows. Elliot leaned back in his chair, disbelief swirling through his thoughts. "Fine," he said. Serafina studied him carefully, as measuring the strength of the man sitting across from her. "Dominic has always been very good at hiding things," she began. "For years I believed I knew the man I married. Successful, charming, loyal." She paused. "But people who shine the brightest in public often hide the darkest secrets in private." Elliot crossed his arms. "I'm not sure why any of that concerns me." "It concerns you," Serafina said quietly, "because Camille was never meant to be his lover." The sentence froze Elliot's thoughts. "What?" Serafina leaned forward slightly. "She was meant to be his distraction." A strange chill moved through Elliot's chest. "If you were in my position," Serafina continued softly, "and someone offered you $50 million to delay a decision that could change everything, what would you do?" I'm curious what you think at this moment in the story. Would you accept the money or sign the divorce immediately? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Elliot stared at her. You're telling me my wife's affair was planned? Unaway, Serafina said, but not by Camille. The cafe suddenly felt colder. Serafina opened her purse and pulled out a single photograph. She placed it on the table. Elliot looked down. The image showed Dominic Vale standing with two men outside a private club. One of the men Elliot recognized immediately. Lucian Mercer, a ruthless corporate attorney known for dismantling companies through legal warfare. The other man Elliot had never seen before. 3 months from now, Serafina said quietly, Dominic plans to disappear. Elliot looked up slowly. Disappear? With a fortune that doesn't belong to him. The rain outside grew heavier, as if the sky itself were leaning closer to hear the truth. If you've ever seen someone hide behind kindness while planning something dangerous. Serafina continued softly, type the word TRDH in the comments. Sometimes the quietest stories carry the biggest revelations. Elliot's mind raced. Why are you telling me this? Because. Serafina said, your divorce could ruin everything. He stared at her. And why should I care about that? Serafina's calm expression finally cracked just slightly. Because if Dominic suspects we know what he's planning, he'll vanish before we can stop him. Elliot felt the weight of her words settle slowly. So let me get this straight, he said. You want me to stay married to a woman who cheated on me to help you catch your husband? Serafina nodded once. For 3 months. Elliot looked again at the divorce papers, then at the $50 million contract, then back at the woman sitting across from him. Nothing about this situation made sense, and yet something in Serafina's steady gaze told him she wasn't lying. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the city skyline. A storm was coming, and Elliot suddenly realized his broken marriage might be the smallest problem in the room. If this moment made you feel the tension building, consider sharing this story with someone who loves powerful twists and emotional drama. Stories like this deserve to be experienced together. Elliot sat motionless for a long time after Serafina finished speaking. The cafe had grown quieter, the rain softened into a gentle drizzle, and the city lights outside flickered against the wet pavement like distant stars. Yet inside Elliot's mind, nothing was calm. You're asking a lot, he finally said. Serafina nodded. I know. He tapped the folder containing the transfer agreement. $50 million is supposed to make this easier? It isn't meant to buy you, she replied quietly. It's meant to protect you. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Protect me from what exactly? Serafina hesitated for the first time since she sat down. Dominic isn't just planning to disappear, she said slowly. He's planning to take several investors' money with him. Elliot felt a cold weight settle in his chest. How much money? Close to 300 million. The number sounded unreal. And my wife? Elliot asked. Serafina looked down at the photograph on the table. Camille doesn't know any of this. Elliot studied her face carefully. You're very sure about that? I've watched Dominic manipulate people for years, Serafina said. Camille is not part of his real plan. She's simply someone he used to create chaos. Elliot leaned back, running a hand through his hair. His anger toward Camille had burned fiercely for weeks. But now a new question appeared in his mind. What if Camille had been played just as much as he had? Serafina slid another document across the table. Dominic believes you'll file for divorce within the next few weeks, she said. Elliot looked at the paper. It was a timeline. Dates, meetings, financial transfers, everything had been mapped out with frightening precision. 3 months. Serafina repeated quietly. That's all we need. Elliot stared at the timeline again. 3 months. It didn't sound like much time. But in 3 months, a life could completely change. If someone betrayed you the way Camille betrayed Elliot. Serafina said thoughtfully. Do you think forgiveness is ever possible? She looked up at him, her eyes calm but curious. I'd like to know what you think about that question. Leave a comment and tell me honestly, can trust ever return after something like this? Elliot remained silent for a moment before speaking again. And after 3 months? After 3 months, Serafina said. Dominic will make his final transfer. And that's when you stop him? Yes. And the 50 million. It becomes yours regardless of what happens. Elliot almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. So you're paying me to stay married? In a way. Serafina admitted. The irony was almost cruel. For 8 years, Elliot had worked tirelessly building his architecture firm, saving every dollar, planning a stable future with Camille. Now a stranger was offering him $50 million simply to wait. He looked down at the divorce papers again. Camille's handwriting filled the margin where she had scribbled a note earlier that week. We need to talk. He had ignored it. At the time, he believed nothing she could say would matter anymore. But now the story seemed incomplete. Elliot folded the divorce papers slowly and placed them back into his briefcase. Serafina watched him carefully. You're considering it? She said. I'm considering that something about this whole situation feels wrong, Elliot replied. That's because it is. The cafe door opened again, letting in a brief gust of cool evening air. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Elliot closed the folder containing the transfer agreement. 3 months? He said quietly. Serafina's eyes met his. 3 months? She confirmed. Elliot stood from the table, slipping the folder into his briefcase. The weight of it felt strange, not just financially, emotionally. He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing, he said.
Yes.
If this works, if Dominic gets caught, what happens to Camille? Serafina considered the question. That depends on whether she chooses honesty when the truth finally arrives. Elliot nodded slowly. Sometimes the hardest battles weren't about money or revenge. Sometimes they were about facing the truth of the people we once loved. And the truth was often far more complicated than betrayal. As Elliot stepped outside into the cool night air, he realized something unexpected. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely broken. He felt curious. If this part of the story surprised you, share it with someone who enjoys deep emotional twists and powerful storytelling. Conversations like these often reveal more about human nature than we expect. 3 months. 90 days. Elliot had no idea what the future would look like, but one thing was certain. The story between him, Camille, Dominic, and Serafina was far from over. And sometimes the most dangerous secrets weren't the ones people tried to hide. They were the ones hidden in plain sight. Before this story continues, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Write the word WAIT in the comments if you believe Elliot made the right decision by delaying the divorce. Because patience can reveal truths that anger never could. And sometimes waiting is the most powerful move a person can make. Finally, if you enjoy stories that explore betrayal, hidden motives, and unexpected redemption, make sure to like this video. Share your opinion in the comments about what Camille might reveal next, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of Elliot's story. Your support helps stories like this continue reaching people who love powerful narratives.